très satisfait des protestants. Views from the Mazarinades during the Fronde. The Huguenots, those adherents to a Calvinistic interpretation of Christianity who were much maligned by the Catholic majority in France, maintained an uneasy presence in the 17th century, despite Henry IV's Edict of Nantes of 1598. The siege of La Rochelle 3 decades later, and the subsequent Peace of Alais, made their status even more difficult to maintain without their walls and garrisons defending their autonomy. They depended solely on the goodwill of the sovereign, truly a masterpiece of absolutism gained by Louis XIII and Richelieu. With the Peace of Alais, the Huguenots seem to have disappeared quietly from public view and maintained the practice of their religion prétendue réformée in the isolation of their towns, villages, and homes. But it must be noted that thousands of them also inhabited Paris. Their apparent acquiescence and quietude did not mean an end to anonymity by the Catholics. Other events not under their control or purview involved them nonetheless. First, the Civil War in England, led by the Puritans, indeed their religious cousins, that is, cousins of the Huguenots, culminated in regicide. Secondly, from 1648 until 1653, France itself faced the civil war known as the Fronde, not based on religion, but on political and financial policies of the regents, Cardinal Mazarin, Anne of Austria, and the deceased Cardinal Richelieu. In the latter situation, the question was whether or not the Huguenots would join the opposition in order to gain political power so apparent even 2 decades earlier. Nonetheless, as Robin Gwynne rightly claims, they were, quote, utterly loyal to the crown. The Calvinist minority in France, almost as a whole, decided to remain aloof from the conflicts, and some of the Huguenots, like Turenne, used their military might to support the monarchy. A fascinating anecdote refers to Jean Guiton, the former mayor of La Rochelle during the siege of 1628. When he died in 1652, as the Fronde was nearing its end, his personal effects included portraits of Richelieu and Louis XIII. With one noticeable exception, they studiously avoided any words or action in support of their English co-religionists, for that would have been considered treasonous. Secondary works on the Huguenots have dwelt on the 16th century wars of religion, the Edict of Nantes, La Rochelle, and the Peace of Alais, and then jump almost immediately to the revocation of 1685. It was as if nothing happened to this minority during those decades except the abominable steps leading to the revocation. Nonetheless, during this period, religious hatred and distrust remained and was often encouraged by the anti-Huguenot flavor of government policies. The Fronde itself was crucial to the Huguenots, since they could have used it as an opportunity to regain what had been lost, especially during the more violent Fronde of the Princes. However, with most of the fervent military leadership gone, and with internal religious divisions apparent, the spirit of military encounter had dissipated. Although several Huguenots joined the anti-Mazarinades camp, including the Ormais in Bordeaux, the vast majority remained officially loyal to the French government, easily demonstrated by examining the Mazarinades the extensive pamphlet literature of that tumultuous era. Perhaps some 5,000 were published during these 5 years, and in them a multiplicity of causes and leaders were lauded and execrated. However, the Huguenots remained quiet despite numerous attacks in the Mazarinades. Religious tension was obvious, but treason was not, at least in the force. At least in the almost 4,000 Mazarinades that I have read. The following is an introduction to the Huguenots and the Fronde as presented by the pamphleteers. The Huguenots strove to prove their trustworthiness, at least by admonishing rebellious groups. Although their religious sympathies were closer to the Presbyterians and Puritans than the Anglicans, their monarchical loyalties and common sense usually prevented any outward defense of the rebels during the English Civil War. Even one of the most radical of the Huguenot leaders, Philippe Vincent, expressed his sympathy for Charles I. However, there were a few Huguenots who rebelled against the regent in Agenais, a center of French Protestantism. Only a certain Tournon joined forces against the government, although several other Calvinist towns were subdued by the Prince de Condé and compelled to support his cause in 1651 and 1652. Moreover, the Armée in Bordeaux was supported by some Protestants, although they were not as its dominant element. The Huguenots expressed their loyalty to Louis XIV by their relative silence and apparent refusal to do anything that might compromise their already precarious position in France. Nevertheless, many Catholic pamphleteers often denounced the Reformed and accused them of being the cause of strife in the kingdom because of their dangerous beliefs deemed the religion prétendue réformée. The author of the Parfait Repos de la France in 1652 affirmed this point. France, he felt, was superbly blessed with defensible boundaries and good soil which produced abundance. Nevertheless, the country was disturbed by two evils: diversity of religion and dissoluteness. He never talks about that. It was the former which he determined as the source of hatred, which disrupted all personal communications. Each group, attempting to convert the other, created strife, thus encouraging sacrilegious and blasphemous acts. As a result, Catholics were forced to tolerate the adherents of the new religion. He pointed out that some political leaders proposed certain expedients for the destruction of this, quote, new opinion. The Huguenots could be excluded from all offices and dignities, guilds, and professions. By various pretexts, they could be deprived of the right to worship in those places guaranteed by the Edict of Nantes. Moreover, the government could subject this menu peuple with extra taxes, quartering of troops, trials, and rigorous condemnations. This might sound familiar because, again, notice it would be used by Louis XIV later on. Anyway, in this manner, their undeserved freedom would be slowly eradicated. However, surprisingly, this pamphleteer did not agree with a program to destroy French Protestantism, for he realized that a subdued religion would be more dangerous to the crown than one which was tolerated. What kind of toleration is this? The Huguenots, he maintained, were well organized and would no longer pledge their loyalty to the king. He concluded that the French king did not want to act contrary to their consciences to his conscience by tolerating Calvinists in his realm. As, quote, it would suffice for God to be the avenger. Influenced by the sanguinary wars of religion, this Catholic author did not want religious conflict once again to be the source of unrest in France. Other pamphleteers did not agree with the Parfait Repos de la France. For example, the Chevalier Chrétien adjured religion to be, quote, the principal part of any state, delineating two mutually antagonistic Catholic parties. He feared the formation of a third, which would be exclusively Protestant. Consequently, he believed that war would escalate substantially, for wherever heretics take part in internal conflicts, they greatly aggravate and intensify them. One Fronde poet said that the Huguenots profited by these difficulties in furthering their disreputable schemes. But importantly, the Reformed religion was considered dangerous to the state since, quote, the heretic is cruel and not faithful to God, and consequently even less faithful to his prince. The author of the Passionné pour le bien de l'État, declaring himself a good Catholic, feared a renaissance of Huguenot power, which would cause another series of civil war in his time, or in another time. Similarly, the fictitious Testament de Philippe II of Spain underscored